All right, Fed Chair Powell, Treasury Secretary Yellen wrapping up their testimony on Capitol Hill. There are many headlines, and Steve Leisman, I guess the biggest one may end up being what Senator Warren had to say about the Fed chair. And even for her, this was a little bit hyperbolic, no?
Yeah, Scott, but you be the judge. I got two big headlines to tell you about. Warren's one of them. I'll get to the other one in just a second, but let me pick up where you started. Senator Elizabeth Warren stating outright she will oppose Fed Chair Powell's renomination, alleging that Powell had weakened banking regulations and calling him a, quote, dangerous man to head the Federal Reserve.
Renominating you means gambling that for the next 5 years, a Republican majority at the Federal Reserve with a Republican chair who has regularly voted to deregulate Wall Street won't drive this economy over a financial cliff again. And with so many qualified candidates for this job, I just don't think that's a risk worth taking. Your record gives me grave concern. Over and over, you have acted to make our banking system less safe, and that makes you a dangerous man to head up the Fed, and it's why I will oppose your renomination.
Powell categorically rejected Warren's claim, saying the banks had historic levels of capital and that the Volcker rule, which Warren mentioned, was changed because it was found to be unworkable. Only on one of Warren's points did Powell concede it was at least worth revisiting. No senator followed up Warren's comments, but only a single Republican senator defended Powell. No Democratic senator did so. Markets have to consider now how important is opposition to Powell's renomination from progressive Democrats like Warren, how important that is for President Biden. But separately, moments ago, a significant development in the ethics controversy at the Fed. Powell revealed for the first time the Fed is looking at whether trades by Fed Presidents Eric Rosengren and Robert Kaplan were, quote, within the law. It's the first time the Fed has said there's a legal review of these tradings. Both presidents have announced their resignations over trading that Powell also said appeared to be within the Fed's code of conduct. And he added that showed the need for the rules to change. He said the Fed would, quote, rise to this moment and address the ethics issues. Scott?
So a couple things. You said it yesterday in one of the conversations you had on this network, and I thought it immediately the minute it happened during the press conference last week. When Jay Powell was asked directly if he still had confidence in the ability of Rosengren and Kaplan to do their jobs, I'm paraphrasing, but that's the nature and the spirit of the question, and he did not answer it directly. You knew from that moment, Steve, that the writing was on the wall.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say I knew this was going to happen. I have never seen something like this happen before. The only precedent here was Jeff Lacker, who was found after an investigation to have talked to a reporter saying things he perhaps should not have said. He ended up resigning, but nothing like this before, Scott. I knew something was going to happen. I didn't think both presidents would end up resigning in the same day. We've never seen anything like that. But certainly, you're right. Powell was asked, are you confident? He said, nobody is happy. This has happened, did not express his confidence. My understanding, Scott, by the way, is Powell did not ask for their resignation.
That's interesting as well to know from your reporting. Look, lastly, this idea that it feels to me, Steve, you correct me if I'm wrong, that every time we hear from Powell now publicly, we get another inflation seems like it's hotter and it's going to last longer than we expected. At what point do we question what the heck they're looking at? I mean, how many people come on the network and say the Fed's wrong? It's going to be more persistent and it's going to be hotter. And yet we feel like we're getting this every time.
I think you're absolutely right about the first point. Powell has increasingly amped up his concern over inflation. They've gone from saying it was transitory to saying it would be transitory plus a few months, then transitory plus a few more months. Today, Scott, I'm sure you noticed there was a significant development. He was asked by Toomey, is it structural? And he seemed to say, yes, it is. I would say, Scott, in the Fed's defense, if you will, nobody's ever reopened an economy. We don't quite understand exactly what it's going to take to reopen the ports. The idea that there is a permanent shipping problem in the world is probably news to everybody. Maybe people understood this was going to happen. The issue really becomes not those elements that caused it. The issue is the Fed's policy response. And I would go back to comments that I've made for a very long time, which is why the Fed did not react in its policy to the massive amount of spending from the fiscal side. That, I think, will go down as being the big mistake that was made.
Yeah. Good insight, Steve, as always. Thank you. That's Steve Leisman.